Bender on the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 99. The Banquet, Part 3. Tony was still jittery with nerves. Yeah, the serious talk was out of the way, but he was not ignorant of the fact how quickly things could go badly, even still. Having this many big egos in the same room was like storing alkali metals next to a swimming pool. Nobody could accuse them of being too careful. This was a crazy idea even before they had their unexpected guests. But it was so far so good. If he did not count the increasingly irritated Pepper. Loki had yet to learn what it was like to deal with her when she was truly fed up with crap. Tony was kind of looking forward to that. He scanned the great hall as soon as they entered. Now that it was buzzing with life, it looked pretty great. Not that he did not appreciate the whole spring and winter theme Pepper and Loki did with it on its own, but now that he saw all the elves sitting next to these huge and colorful ikebana-like decorations and the ice elves among the ice sculptures, yeah, he could see what look they were going for. Frey, Gerd, and Skrymir parted ways with them immediately to greet all the elven lords and ladies. Loki questioned his uncle whether it would be wiser to greet the Fey Queen first, but Fey just smiled and told them that it would do no good for her to be too spoiled. Loki did not argue with him, and Tony definitely wouldn't touch this sort of political maneuvering with a 10-foot pole. Baba Queen's table was outstanding on its own, even in a hall as stunning as this one. Thor and Hatchet were still sitting by her, but now it looked like Drongo, Bee, and Juyu decided to relocate there too. Not a bad thing at all. Drongo was a smooth talker and very hard to dislike, while the girls were interesting and clever enough to not go around insulting people. But they were not the only ones by the table. For a moment, Tony just stared, trying to decide what he was looking at. But then he got a glimpse of two very familiar gnomes tossing around a piece of bread on the tabletop and realized what was going on. "She did summon more Fae," he commented. "Local ones." "It appears so," Loki agreed. There was thick grass on the floor around the table, and the floral decorations were even bigger and looked more alive than all of the other ones. Soft clouds were swirling above them near the ceiling, but thankfully no rain fell from it. The Fae he saw sitting on the chairs and on the table were unfamiliar for the most part, except for one, the chick that healed Hatchet. Tony would have recognized her anywhere. Oh, right, she was working for him now. Of course she was here. Something else seemed to catch Loki's gaze, though, because he narrowed his eyes. Tony tried to figure out what he was looking at, but before he could ask, Loki was marching towards the table. After a few steps, Tony noticed the blonde guy sitting next to Thor. He never saw him before, but the clothes gave him a pretty good idea about where he came from. Loki stopped by the table, and for a moment, he did not seem to care about Baba Queen's presence. "Thor? Brother!" Thor turned to greet him joyously. "What is he doing here?" Loki asked, looking pointedly at the blonde, who still had his back turned to Loki. "Why, Loki," the blonde spoke before Thor could. "It is, of course, such a joy to see you." Whoa! Which was when he finally turned around and looked at Loki. He sort of froze, and it would have been kind of funny if Tony hadn't known that he reacted to Loki's appearance this way. Loki just scowled at the other. "Again. See you again." The guy finally recovered and smiled a little too widely, and it is not at all strange or disturbing in any way. "Fondro," Thor chided him, wearing a frown himself, but a considerably smaller one than Loki. The guy put his hands up defensively. "By which I mean that it's fine and normal. Perfectly normal, and I think I'll have a drink now." He pointedly turned away, grabbed a glass, and started gulping down whatever was in it to silence himself. Loki just rolled his eyes and turned to look at Thor again. "Really?" "I needed someone to help carry the chests. Would you have preferred I brought Sif? She was rather adamant." Loki just scowled some more. "What chests?" "I brought you gifts, of course," Thor answered. "I did not invite you to bring me gifts," Loki said. "Come on, it's always good to bring you gifts," Juyu chimed in. Baba Queen laughed out loud, and all the Fae along with her. Hatchet grinned. Drongo and Beast smiled knowingly. It all made Thor look a little pleased with himself. The blonde guy, Fondral, smirked into his glass too. Tony didn't know what sort of look he gave Juyu, but she raised her eyebrows in a very unimpressed way in return. "The gifts are not just from me," Thor said as he stood up. He raised his voice a little as well.
I am mostly just delivering them to you. They are from Mother.
Loki looked a little surprised, while Bubba Queen let out a little curious, "Oh." Tony did not have to know the exact significance of this to realize that it meant something important. The elves sitting by the nearby tables were definitely showing interest in the proceedings as well, and soon most of the hall was focusing on Thor and Loki. Tony did not glance at the Avengers/presidential table behind him, but he was pretty sure they were watching them too. The chests in question were apparently by the table just out of Tony's sight, because Fandral stood up and carried them closer one by one. There were 3 of them, one small and thin, made of dark wood, swirls and leaves carved into it, while the 2 larger ones were gold, heavy-looking chests, adorned both with small flowers and runes. When Thor stepped closer to Loki, he held out the small box to him. Loki seemed to recognize it without having to open it.
"Brother, I hope they are to your liking,"
Thor proclaimed. "Thor, these are your—"
"I have no need for them,"
Thor said quietly, interrupting Loki gently. He ran his fingers over the carving on top of the box.
"I should have given them to you the day after they were given to me."
There was a story there. Tony knew it. He knew it from the way Thor looked up at Loki again, his eyes kind, hopeful, and a little apologetic. He knew from the way Loki seemed to be speechless for a few moments, disbelieving and maybe just a little touched. He reached out for the box slowly, like he expected it to be pulled away, but Thor just handed it over with a smile. They kept standing there quietly for a few moments, both of them looking at the small chest, completely oblivious to how silent the hall fell. Then Loki opened the box. Finally. Tony had to lean a bit forward to see inside of it. They were knives or daggers. He couldn't see them that well. Made from almost white-colored metal. They were finely made, wickedly sharp, gleaming things. Definitely perfect for Loki. It was strange to think that anyone would have given them to Thor instead. It must have happened a long time ago. "Thank you." Loki looked up at his brother when he closed the wooden box again. Thor smiled wide and brightly, and then stepped forward to pull Loki into an embrace. Loki did not protest despite the box getting trapped between them. He even lifted his free hand to put it on Thor's back. Tony reminded himself, again, to never underestimate the big fella. He was definitely a lot craftier than most people gave him credit for. He could have given this gift to Loki in private, but he chose to do it in front of an audience. An important audience, at that. He deliberately made a big show of this, bringing Loki a gift of his own instead of just delivering his mother's, when he was in no way obliged to do so. Like this, he made it blatantly clear to everyone in attendance, all the elves, fae, and humans alike, where the future king of Asgard stood when it came to his brother. Thor and Loki stepped back from one another after a long moment, and Thor immediately turned to the 2 other chests.
"Your mother, Queen Frigga of Asgard, sent her warm regards to you with these gifts, for you, brother, and for Anthony Stark, one of Midgard's great heroes."
He was smiling widely when he looked over to Tony, obviously enjoying seeing his surprise. Tony walked closer to stand next to Loki now that he was suddenly part of the whole ordeal.
"That is amazingly kind of her,"
Tony said. Now he was eyeing the chests with a lot more curiosity than before.
"Let's start with yours."
He heard a little laughter from some of the tables, probably because of his lack of fanfare and obvious giddiness. But seriously, they had to get used to him sooner or later anyway. There was no reason to pretend.
"Very well."
Thor nodded and lifted up one of the chests to put it between himself and Loki on the ground. Loki did not hesitate, opening it up, and he almost immediately stared up at Thor again. All Tony saw was deep brown or black feathers? Thor nodded with a smile, while Loki reached in to lift whatever that thing was out of the chest. Tony heard a few gasps coming from some elf tables. It was a coat? A feather coat? Cloak? Something like that. But not the silly frilly sort, the way feather boas look like. No, it was made from long, gleaming pinions, some a little lighter brown, while others completely black. It was impressive if you were a fabulous fashionista supervillain, but that was a little outdated for Loki. Tony had the feeling that he was missing something again. "Valhammer," Loki breathed out. But why? He looked up at Thor.
Mother said to me that the time of her travels has ended. Thor told him that this should remain in the hands of a master of magic. So now her prized feather cloak shall aid you in your future journeys to far lands.
Yeah, put it on! Yelled Hatchet, getting a few laughs here and there for the comment. Loki sent him a look, but smiled sharply as he wrapped the cloak around his shoulders with a grand flourish. It moved unnaturally, and the feathers rustled like bird wings, glistening and thrumming with something that had to be magic under the lights of the hall. The cloak covered Loki perfectly, almost molding itself around his shape. It looked pretty great, especially on Loki's tall and slender form, but this was obviously not just a stylish garment. Loki lifted his arms and swirled the cloak around, and he immediately dissolved into dozens of fluttering wings, an actual swarm of dark birds that started flying around in the hall. Wow, Tony muttered under his breath as he grinned at the sight. That was pretty sweet. The bird swarm quickly flew from one end of the hall to the other, then they returned and sort of reassembled until they were in dark shape, then just Loki again, standing in his new feather cloak, looking incredibly pleased with himself. The elves were applauding and cheering loudly, but the Fae were whistling and hooting too. They either praised the gift or Loki's ability to use it. Probably both.
Iron Man, your gift,
Thor said then. Oh, right. I'm kind of dying of curiosity here, he admitted as he quickly jogged closer to the remaining chest.
Is it a puppy?
Thor laughed heartily and gestured at the chest again. If possible, he looked even more excited than before. Tony crouched it down and opened the lid. To see some cloth? Clothing too? Not that he would say no to magical clothes, but it was not really his thing. He reached inside and touched the red material. It was incredibly soft and silky, finer than his most expensive clothes. He gently lifted it out and let it unravel. That got a reaction from everywhere around the room. A lot more noise and immediate chatter filled the hall. The piece of cloth was actually something like a flag, maybe. Or just the sort of fancy woven drapery you put on your wall instead of paintings. It was mainly red, but trimmed and decorated with gold and some light blue, and it had an unfamiliar coat of arms in the center. It had a bird in the middle, runes woven around it, and also the same little flowers that decorated the chest.
I'm afraid I'm not really getting this. I don't want to be rude,
he said. Maybe he could have been more subtle about not knowing what the heck he was supposed to do with this beyond putting it up in his living room. Stark, Loki spoke, suddenly standing next to him, still wearing his feather cloak. That's... He looked at the flag in Tony's hand in something that was suspiciously like wonderment, a very unusual expression for him. This is yours, he said finally. Yes, I know how gifts work, Tony answered. Rhodey snorted so loudly at his table that Tony could hear him even where he stood. No, Loki laughed. This is yours now. The All-Mother has given you a crest. A what? He asked and immediately started looking at it again, now paying a lot more attention to the details. He kept staring at the sort of golden bird. No, wait. The ends of its feathers were flames, and then he spotted the single blue circle on its breast. Holy crap, I have a crest, he said quietly, and it had a phoenix on it. Thor walked up to them and pointed at the very top of the escutcheon, where a symbol made up from 3 crescent moons was encircled in a ring of flowers and nuts.
That is the symbol of our Queen Mother, Thor explained. She is the one who bestowed this title upon you. You have received a goodwill and a blessing. Everyone who sees this will know that you are in her favor. Tony didn't get the chance to react to that. Thor moved his hand to point at another symbol left to Friggus. Loki, Tony said before Thor could speak, because that one he knew. The 2 entangled snakes biting their own tails. He saw it plenty of times on Loki's armors. Thor laughed while Tony turned to grin at Loki. I need not explain why my mother put Loki's sigil on your crest, Thor said. Nah, I have a pretty good idea, Tony said as he tilted his chin up a little too wordlessly to demand a kiss. Loki gave it to him, of course. Thor politely waited until they parted to continue. The third one, he said, gesturing at the symbol right up to Frigga's. That's you. Holy crap, I saw your hammer enough times. Tony interrupted him. He would have recognized that particular swastika anywhere, just as easily as he recognized Loki's snakes. Yes, indeed. Thor nodded. I hope you do not mind. Our friendship may be still new, but I hope it will remain strong for many years to come. Are you kidding me? Thank you. Damn. Thor put a hand around his shoulder and patted it heavily a few times. My brain kind of went offline a little just now when I started realizing the implications. Tony said that, I mean, is this like being a knight? Like getting a title from a royal, right? Do you have knights in Asgard? We do not use that title, but it is similar enough, Loki confirmed. Holy crap, I'm a knight, Tony exclaimed. Juju and P were definitely laughing at him. He could hear them. They were probably not the only ones laughing at him as he was clutching the fine fabric like a child on his best Christmas. He did not care at all. He had a friggin' crest, and he got it from Loki's mom. Well, you are obviously pleased, Loki said. Obviously, Tony said, still looking at the coat of arms. He was going to memorize every detail of it. He was going to have Jarvis scan it, and then he was going to put it on his stuff. Yeah, his Stark Industries logo was pretty great, but this was something else. In that case, Loki smiled and lifted a hand, magic burning between his fingers. A moment later, long draperies rolled down the walls like red waterfalls, flickering into existence out of thin air, all of them displaying the same golden crest, the phoenix with the blue heart. Tony's crest. Seriously. The applause was maybe even greater than before when Loki demonstrated his new cloak. This definitely did not happen every day. I'm not gonna lie. This is ridiculously cool, Tony said as he looked around in the room. It is indeed, Loki smiled. They got separated when Loki dragged his brother over to Frey, Gerd, and Skrymir, with Fandral dutifully on their heels, so that Thor could greet them properly as well. Tony would have loved nothing more than to sit down with Drongo, Juju, and B for a while, but then he just had to turn towards the Avengers/presidential table. His first thought was, crap, I forgot the president, and then the second, crap, Clint and Natasha, because they were all sitting at the same table. Great! Before he could make his way over, President Carter stood up and headed towards him. Tony walked a little away from Baba Queen's table just to be sure. I really don't know what I expected when I came here, was what she opened with. To be awed and amazed, Tony prompted, but she just stared back at him. Well, welcome either way. Glad you could make it. He offered his hand, and she took it, shaking it firmly. There's no need to pretend that you wanted me here, Stark. If I really didn't want you here, I think I could have found a way to keep you out. Bold words. You already know me. Why pretend? Tony shrugged, then gestured towards the bar. Drink. Then you can say what you came here to say without having this many ears around. The bar was a little secluded, and it was not too busy either, considering all guests were served by their tables. The president nodded, so Tony led the way. Steve sent him some meaningful look, but Tony had absolutely no idea what it was supposed to mean, so he just shook his head incredulously back at him. Steve sighed and gave up on nonverbal communication right away. Hank, Janet, and Bucky were still by the bar, drowning drinks and chatting. Janet waved at him cheekily, so Tony smiled back at her, then sat down on a stool at the other end of the bar. He was not really in the habit of drinking lately, but this was a special occasion, so he ordered a martini. President Carter went for a gin and tonic. So are you suitably satisfied that I'm not planning world domination with my friends? He asked. I'm not actually convinced that you don't, Carter replied. You've been secretive. With good reason. Have you looked at my house lately? Not pretty. I'll give you that. Carter nodded, taking a sip from her drink. Let's cut to the chase here. You probably prefer that, Tony told her. You wanted to be here because you want in on this alliance building I'm doing here, right? This isn't just about that. She shook her head. But yes, I want your friends to stay friendly, not just you, but to the general populace as well, because I have a feeling there are a lot more enemies than friends out there. You're not wrong, Tony admitted. But we were attacked out of nowhere. Again. By aliens. Again. You brought your allies, we dodged a bullet, but this can't keep repeating itself. Again, not disagreeing. I'm just not sure why you're telling me this. Shouldn't you be kicking the asses of your employees?
I would if I thought it would help. What I need is information, and you don't seem too keen on sharing.
So that's why the personal visit. I gotta say, I'm flattered, I really am. Back in the day, I always just got shield sent on my ass.
I know you won't cooperate with them,
Carter said. Tony just smiled, not wanting to say anything about it.
and when I want to get things done, I do it myself.
So what's in it for me?
Tony asked. The safety of your country? Your world?
Yeah, the thing is, I'm pretty sure I have more to bring to the table on that front than you do. I'm making friends with gods here. Kings and queens.
You seemed to need the Navy's help before,
Carter countered. Yeah, as extra firepower, but if we're under attack, you're gonna supply us with that anyway. Her face tensed and her eyes hardened. None of the politeness Tony saw before was visible now.
What are you hiding?
She asked. Tony smiled into his glass again and shrugged. How do they say? Knowledge is power. That's one side of it, but mainly I just don't want to give you or anyone else here on Earth ideas.
She waited, not saying anything, so Tony continued.
Yes, I know some of the bigger threats that are out there in the universe, but I also know about a lot of places that some people would just love to take advantage of. And come on, I don't need to educate someone like you about our history. We're always eager to put our greedy little hands on uncharted lands and take what we want.
And what gave you the right to...
No one gave me the right. I took it. Tony answered stonily. I'm not trying to make an enemy out of you, but I'm the one who was out there. I have the knowledge, the technology, and the allies. So when I say no, there's nothing you can do about it. Earth is not ready to step out of its sandbox, and I'm not some idiot who would risk our future because of the ambitions of politicians.
She did not look like she wanted to speak, but Tony wouldn't have let her anyway, not before he spoke his mind.
We all know how this song and dance goes, President Carter. First, everything is just in the name of defending ourselves. That's why S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying to build weapons out of the Tesseract as a precaution, but it never ends there. Defense becomes a counterattack, and then preemptive attacks, and then we are just downright waging wars on others to take what we want. It will probably happen sooner or later, but I'm not going to be the one who opens the floodgates. In fact, I will do my damn best to make sure it happens later rather than sooner.
Tony just stood on the other end of her sharp gaze for a few long moments, then she emptied her gin and tonic and put the glass back on the bar. She did not look angry, which was always a good sign. Believe it or not, I'm not stupid either. The last thing this country or Earth needs right now is venturing out into space looking for trouble. We have our own backyard to take care of, our own mess to clean up. When I say defense, I mean defense.
Tony grimaced. You see, the thing is, I don't know you. And if I don't know you, I can't trust you. You're either telling me the truth or feeding me bullshit. I just can't tell.
That could change, she said. And she was right. With time, Tony would learn what the hell kind of person she was. But not yet. He did not have enough information. He was literally off-planet for years, so he missed a lot. Catching up with U.S. politics was not a priority so far.
You can get information about the most likely threats, but I'm not at your beck and call,
he said at the end. You should really not forget that I know everything about your blue lover boy over there, including his involvement in the Battle of New York, she said in return.
Tony felt his face go rigid, his smile slipping off immediately. You really don't want to go there,
he said in an even voice. She was completely unfazed, of course, but Tony had a feeling it was not because she was underestimating him, but because she was not underestimating herself. I scheduled a meeting with Miss Potts, she said without reacting to Tony's words in any way. Come, and we'll talk. She stood up from her bar stool, getting ready to walk away.
You know, if you're really this adamant about getting me to work with you, there are better ways to do it. I mean, hey, I'm not saying 100%, but I would still consider Secretary of Defense. He grinned at his joke, then drank the last of his martini.
Good. I hate the current one anyway,
she said, making him choke on the last sip.
I'll see you at our meeting, Mr. Stark. Don't be late.
Enjoy your evening, ma'am, Tony called after her, putting his glass down.
Well, if this was not the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
He stood up, and he was just straightening his jacket when he caught the familiar splash of red at the edge of his vision that meant one Black Widow was being up to no good. When he turned, he saw her standing right in front of Loki. She was wearing that big Natalie Rushman smile that looked honest but was obviously faked to the core. Tony wasn't sure why she was putting up an act, but she definitely had her reasons. He could, of course, not hear what she was saying, but whatever it was, it made Loki flash one of his shark smiles. Then she leaned closer, and she either whispered something in his ear or kissed his cheek, but it was very weird either way. When she pulled back, she turned and left without a single word. Tony really wondered what that was all about. "We are way behind schedule," Pepper said. Tony turned toward her. "The schedule was always kind of loose as far as I know,"
he said. "There is loose, and then there is utter chaos, Tony."
"It's Loki, God of chaos, mischief, and the like. What did you expect?"
"I really don't know,"
she sighed. Tony chuckled and put an arm around her for support. "Okay, tell me what's supposed to be happening, and I make it happen," he offered.
"Oh, really? Just like that?"
"I just became a knight of Asgard. Sort of. Damn straight I'm gonna make it happen." He grinned. She rolled her eyes, but brought up the schedule on her Stark phone, showing it to him. Tony went over the list quickly. "So, everyone is already drinking?"
"And eating," Pepper said. "Loki said it's best to lay out everything as soon as they take their tables, so there was no schedule for that."
"Okay, so time for the drummers then," Tony decided. "That should get this party started."
"I'm not sure how much I should dread that,"
Pepper said. "It's not going to be worse than my birthday party," Tony said. He didn't even need to elaborate which party he meant. She knew it well.
"Nothing could ever be worse than your birthday party,"
she agreed. The drummers were a definite hit, just as Loki said they would be after Jarvis pulled up some online videos and showed him what the entertainment proposed by Pepper sounded and looked like. It took about 5 minutes for the elves to start dancing. They were the best guests Tony ever had. They brought their own booze, which they dutifully started drinking up from the second they sat down by their tables, and now they were turning the whole hall into a delightful mixture of sound, movement, and color. He lost Loki in the hall. Again, one would think his blue skin would make him stand out more, but no, this was not that sort of party. In the end, he had a drink and a chat with Janet, as promised, and went back to sit with Drongo, Hatchet, and the girls. Well, and the Fae, because the table was obviously the Fae table at this point. Baba Queen looked properly entertained, even without Thor being there to flash his big smiles at her, so Tony wasn't too worried. Not even the calculating gaze she swept over the room made him too uneasy. She obviously came here to make it known that she was not someone to be looked over or forgotten. Pilfskin climbed up on the back of his chair to hang from his shoulder about 2 seconds after he sat down, but Tony just picked up some random piece of food from the table and handed it to him.
"I'm not your pet,"
the gnome grumbled. "You're perching on my shoulder there, buddy, just FYI. And if you don't want snacks..." Pilfskin grabbed his hand before he could move it away, finally taking the offered food.
"I did not say that," he said. "I just don't want you to get any ideas."
"Noted." Tony chuckled. He nodded at the other Fae. Some of them were almost as green as Juyu and Bee, while some of them white and tiny, flitting around above the table. Oh, those had to be pixies. He just knew it. Some of the smiles he got were just a little bit disturbing, but they looked overall friendly, so Tony grinned back shamelessly. He saw from the corner of his eye that Baba Queen was looking at him, but he was pretty sure he should just not talk to her unless she initiated conversation. She seemed like the type who did not like to be interrupted when she was silently observing others.
"Did you only invite the Avengers from your human friends?"
Juyu asked. "Well, Rhodey is not an Avenger, and he's here. So are Pepper and Happy." He thought about it for a moment. "I literally do not have any other human friends." "What of Dr. Algren?" Hatchet asked. "I thought I would see him here tonight." "Why would I invite my doctor?" Tony asked in return, looking over at him. "If not for him, I would have not been able to save Bee from her injuries," Hatchet said simply.
"I did not meet him,"
Bee said.
"I should. He's more familiar with my intestines than with me."
"That was unnecessarily graphic," Tony said while Juyu snickered next to him. "He's definitely one of the most fascinating humans I have ever met," Hatchet said. Tony looked at him for a moment, considering. "Wait, is this some gratitude thing, or do you just want to get laid?" he asked. Juyu snorted, Bee rolled her eyes, while Hatchet just raised one of his thin eyebrows. "He was confident," Hatchet mused. "If I ever did that, he would definitely be on the list," he told him. Tony tilted his head in confusion, not sure how to answer that. Drongo hummed, staring at him, looking positively thoughtful.
Hatchet, I believe Stark does not actually know that you do not partake in carnal pleasures.
Wait, what? Like, at all? Why didn't I know that? Tony asked. How is this actually news to you? Juyu asked. Loki told us repeatedly that he's not interested in such things.
Well, yeah, but that always sounded like not interested in one-night stands or adultery.
Tony said.
You people need to tell me things, come on.
Hatchet looked both incredibly amused and slightly incredulous when Tony looked over at him again.
Okay, did I just insult you?
He really wasn't sure. Hatchet grinned sharply and emptied his glass. Nah.
Good, moving on then. Enjoying the party. And should you two be drinking like that?
He asked when he noticed that it was most definitely elven wine the girls had in their glasses. Again, I can know how to shoot a guy from...
Alright, hypocrisy, I get it. I'm shutting up. Get drunk, I'm gonna take pictures, and they make fun of you tomorrow.
You're a horrible person, Juyu stated as she took a sip from her glass.
If you're only just getting that now, oh boy, do I have news for you.
Can't you just find Loki and drag him into some bathroom to have inappropriate sex with him and leave me alone? Drongo and Hatchet laughed loud enough to drag the attention of some of the nearby tables to them. Pilfskin was giggling on his shoulder. Tony lifted his hand to clutch mocking at his heart while Juyu smirked.
I am horrified, appalled even, he said, but that's actually a good idea.
He drummed his fingers on the table and stood up, putting the gnome down on the table before he could fall off. Hatchet cackled and cheered loudly as Tony walked away from the table, unsurprisingly. He did not try to find Loki right away because he needed some liquid courage for this. It was not going to be easy to convince Loki that this was a good idea because it really wasn't. Not that bad ideas ever deterred Tony from anything. He found Barton and Bucky by the bar. He actually had no idea how these two got along, but they looked companionable enough standing there.
Well, hello,
he greeted them as soon as he ordered a double shot of whiskey.
Enjoying the party?
I just saw an ironet grinding on a blue elf chick, Barton said with a dazed look on his face.
I'm pretty sure Natasha just got it on by a pair of elf siblings,
Bucky added.
Wow.
Tony nodded, draining his drink.
Well, I'm about to try and have a quickie with my lovely prince, so
good for you. Bucky laughed into his glass. Barton groaned like he was being tortured. I did not need to know that, he complained, burying his face in his arms on top of the bar. Why would you tell me that? Tony felt ridiculously pleased with himself as he stepped back from the bar. Bucky raised his glass in a congratulatory gesture and even smirked a little. Tony was seriously starting to like the guy.
Hey, Barton.
He turned back one last time. For the love of all that's holy, stop speaking, Stark!
Barton warned. You're getting your action figure, Bertie, he told him, and your stupid toy bows.
What?
You're not a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent anymore, so you can be merchandised.
Tony shrugged and turned his back on them again.
Dr. Pepper, he called back.
He heard Barton give a little victory whoop behind him. The little things. It took him about 3 minutes to find Loki and another 5 minutes of over-the-top inappropriate whispering before he was dragged out of the hall by him. Loki being turned on while being a little pissed was a not-so-secret kink of his. Judging by the tight grip Loki had on him, he was gonna get fucked up against a wall very soon. It sent a delightful thrill down his spine. And hey, look at that, there was an ironet grinding on a blue elf. But Tony barely saw them because his mind was only focused on one thing and one thing only.
Damn, I love you,
he managed to say. His breath was knocked out of him a little when his back hit the tiled wall, but he was not about to complain. Loki's red eyes looked darker than ever, bathed in lust lit on fire from within. They were mesmerizing. You will worship me when I'm done with you, Loki rumbled into his ear as he pressed his body close. Tony threw back his head and laughed because he already did.